Hello guys. So now we are moving on to the third part of biostatistics. Okay. So the reference textbook are the same. So first and foremost I'll explain what is a hypothesis. We've already covered this portion in the topic of epidemiology. So let me explain it once again. Hypothesis is a statement or an assumption about relationships between variables. Okay. Or it is a tentative explanation for certain behaviors, phenomenon or events that have occurred or that will occur. Okay. So when we are learning about biostatistics, we will explain everything in terms of hypothesis. So you know what is a hypothesis, what all components will a hypothesis make, isn't it? We have detailed study has been we have came across in the epidemiology, descriptive epidemiology, right? Okay. So what is the steps in hypothesis testing? So biostatistics is all about testing a hypothesis. Okay. So first we have to state null and alternate hypothesis. That is a very important step in biostatistics. We have to state null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Second step is specifying the levels of significance. Next is compute the test statistics, and last one is making a decision. Okay, so these are the steps in hypothesis testing. So first I've told you what we should state the null hypothesis and the alternate hypothesis. Next we have to set the level of significance. Next is test statistics, that is our test of significance, and the final thing is making a decision based on our p-value. Clear? Let me explain everything in detail. So first we will see what is a null hypothesis and what is an alternate hypothesis. Okay. So a null hypothesis, it states the existence of or no relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. Okay. So whenever we are doing a study, for example, we want to investigate the association between height and height of a students and their nutrition status. Simple study, very simple study. So we have to state the null hypothesis. So null hypothesis, we have to say like this: there is no association between the dependent and independent variable. So there is no relationship between the height and the nutritional status of the children. That is how we should state a null hypothesis. So example I have given: there is no relationship between diabetes and periodontitis. So that is a null hypothesis. Okay. Now we are moving on to the alternate hypothesis. So there we have a null hypothesis. So what could be the alternate? There is a relationship, or there exists a relationship between two or more variables. So the alternate could be there is a relationship between the diabetes and periodontitis. So that is clear. So that is what null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis always states that there exists no existence between the dependent and the independent variable. That is null. Okay, there is no existence. Clear? Next step is we have to set the levels of significance. Okay, so before that you should be familiar with certain terms and certain concepts. Okay, so I'm telling you beforehand, this is all about concepts and theorems. Okay, you don't have to break your head by thinking how it came, what is the mathematical logic behind it and all. Don't think too much. Okay, just study the important points like what I have given in this PPT. You have to study that much only. Okay, so I'm just telling you the most important things. Okay, what is needed for you, that is only I'm explaining. Okay, and it is all theorems and concepts, so you have to by heart it like that. Clear? So levels of significance, the confidence with which, so what is the levels of significance? It is the confidence with which an experimenter can reject or accept the null hypothesis depending on the significance level adopted. So what is the levels of significance? Clear? Make it clear. Okay, it is the confidence with which an experimenter rejects or accepts a null hypothesis. Again I am telling, it is a confidence with which an experimenter can reject or accept a null hypothesis depending on the significance level adopted. Okay, you have to by heart this sentence. This is asked like this: what does the levels of significance means? Okay, and most importantly, it is the rejection region. Okay, level of significance is the rejection region. I'll explain it in detail. Okay, which is outside the confidence or the acceptance region. Okay, this statement I'll explain using this graph. Say that graph, it is a bell shaped graph. Okay, so we have an acceptance region and we have a rejection region. You know what is, when will we accept a null hypothesis and when will we reject an hypothesis on the basis of p-value, that I have told you earlier. Similarly, the level of significance always comes in the rejection region, that is outside the acceptance region, outside the confidence or the acceptance region. See, that shaded portion is the rejection, so that is the level of significance. It is usually denoted by the letter alpha. Okay, so these three things you have to by heart. Okay, so what is the levels of significance? It is the confidence with which an experimenter can reject or accept the null hypothesis, which is depending on the significance level adopted. and the level of significance is denoted by alpha, and level of significance is the rejection region, and the center portion is the acceptance region. Clear? Next, moving on to selecting our significance level. Okay, though any level of significance can be adopted, in practice we have to take 5% or 1% levels of significance. Okay, we usually take 5 or 1% level of significance. So when we take a 5% level of significance, so 5 by 100, that is 0.05. So alpha, it is denoted by alpha, no? So alpha equal to 0.05. So what does it means? Okay, this is also very important. This can be asked as a question. I think there is a question related to this in Pulse. So when we take 5% level of significance, that is 0.05, it means that there are about 5 chances out of 100 that we would reject the null hypothesis. Okay, so 5% significance means there are 5 out of 100 chances, okay, that we would reject the null hypothesis. So otherwise we can also tell like that there is 95% chances are that the null hypothesis will be accepted, 5 chances of rejecting and 95 chances of accepting. I hope it is clear. Okay, so as a whole we are computing it as 100%. So out of this 100, 5% of chance of committing or 5% of chance of going to reject the null hypothesis, and 95 chances of making or we have a chance of accepting the null hypothesis. Okay, so we have a 95% chance of accepting the null hypothesis. Okay, the null hypothesis will be accepted, which means we are 95% confidence we have made the right decision. Okay, that is what a significant that is what a 5% significant level means. Okay, so this is very important. It is denoted by alpha. So what does it mean? The level of significance is 5%. There are about 5%, 5 chances out of 100 that we would reject, or 95% of chances that we will be accepting the null hypothesis, which means that our decision what we've made is 95%. We are confident that we have made a right decision. So I hope it is clear. Procedure for test of significance. So first step is over. Okay, so what was the first step? Stating the null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. The second step also we have studied. We have to set the levels of significance. Now it is time for test of significance. Okay, so whenever we start with the test of significance, we have to always start with the hypothesis, that is a null hypothesis is true. Okay, if the null hypothesis is true, then we are finding out what is the probability of getting a result as extreme as found in the study due to chance alone. Okay, so we have to always start state the null hypothesis, and we have to believe that the null hypothesis is true, and then we are finding the probability of getting the result as extreme as found in the study due to chance alone. We are finding the probability of that chance. Okay, so if that chance or the probability is less than 0.05, we can reject the null hypothesis. If it is greater than 0.05, we can accept the null hypothesis. So rejection level is the alpha. Okay, so I hope you can connect the things. Okay, so before that we should study what are the types of error coming in levels of significance. Okay, so see that column. What is H0? H0 is the null hypothesis. Okay, so you can see the next column, you can see type 1 error. So when we are committing a type 1 error, when the null hypothesis is true, but still we have to reject, or we are rejecting a null hypothesis when it is true, then we are committing type 1 error. So rejecting a null hypothesis when it is true, type 1 error. Okay, then when it is type 2 error, see the last row, accepting a null hypothesis when it is false. That is when we fails to reject a null hypothesis when it is false. So that is type 2 error. Okay, so rejecting a null hypothesis when it is true, it is type 1, and accepting when it is false is a type 2 error. So type 1 rejecting a null hypothesis when it is true, type 2 is accepting when it is false. Okay, then what is the correct decision? So when the hypothesis is true, null hypothesis is true, we have to accept. Okay, so when the null hypothesis is true, we have to accept it. That is, we should fail to reject the hypothesis. So that is the correct decision. So when the hypothesis is false, when the null hypothesis is false, we should reject it. So that is the correct decision. So when we can't do this correct decisions, we are committing two types of error, type 1 and type 2. Clear? So always remember in mind, type 1 is rejection, a null hypothesis when it is true, and type 2 is accepting. When will an error comes when we accept a wrong thing, right? So accepting when it is false. Okay. So that is type 2 error. Clear. So a false thing should be discarded. So when we accept it, we'll get a type 2 error. Clear. So what is type 1? Rejecting a null hypothesis when it is true. So it is denoted as alpha, that is levels of significance. That is the probability of type 1 error should be less than 5%. Okay, remember this always. It should be less than 5%. Okay, type 2 is accepting a null hypothesis when it is false, denoted as beta. So what is alpha, type 1, and what is beta? Type 2. And the probability of type 2 error should be between 10 to 20%. Okay, study this by heart. Next, we are moving to power of the study. So, power of the study means it is the probability of rejecting a null hypothesis when it is false. So, that is the correct thing that we should do. So, power means it is a probability that we are doing or we are rejecting a null hypothesis when it is false. So, that is the power. As the name suggests, it is the actual power of the study, rejecting a null hypothesis when it is false. And it is denoted as 1 minus beta. Power is usually 80 to 90%. We have to set or we have to do study with the power of 80 to 90%. Okay. So next is standard error. So standard error, it is the standard deviation of the sampling distribution of the statistic. Okay, it is a standard deviation of the sampling distribution. Clear? So we have two things, standard error of mean and standard error of proportion. You have to by heart this equation. Problems are being asked. Okay. So standard error of mean is S by root of n, proportion is root of pq by n. Okay. So where S is the standard deviation, n is the sample, p and q are the proportion of occurrence of events in two groups. They will give you all these values. You have to find out the standard error. Clear? Okay. Next we are moving on to the test of significance. Okay. So I have already told you through this test of significance, we are finding the p value. Okay, so what is p value? P value gives you the probability or the relative frequency that the observed difference that we have got in our study is whether due to chance or not. So similarly, these test of significance are the test or the math are those tests, okay, which will help you in finding the p-value. So these tests are the mathematical methods by which a probability or the relative frequency of an observed difference occurring by chance is found. Same thing. Okay. So this will help in finding the p-value. So the p-value same concept is applied here. Okay. So we have two types of test, like parametric and non-parametric test. That is a broad classification of tests of significance, and it is based on the normality, based on the distribution pattern. So if the observations are normally distributed, you know what is a normal distribution, then we can use a parametric test. And if it is skewed distribution, that means if it is not normally distributed, we have to go for non-parametric test. Very simple. Okay, so now let's see parametric test. Okay, what are the requisites to parametric test? Okay, so when the data is quantitative, very important. So quantitative data, it follows a normal distribution. Okay, and the data should be randomly selected, should be obtained from a sample that is randomly selected, and there is equal variance assumption. Okay, if not, if our observation is not following any of these criteria, we have to go for non-parametric test of significance. Most importantly, we have to see whether it is following a normal distribution or not. So how you in software, how we can find is like, we'll find out the mean, median and mode. If mean, median and mode is equal, then the data is following normal distribution. If not, it is said to be skewed. Okay, we'll be having huge number of data, so just with by examining the presence of outliers we cannot tell, right? So only the how we are doing in software is finding the mean, median and mode. If both are equal, then it is follow. If three are mean, median and mode are equal, then it is following a normal distribution. Then we can go for a parametric test. Okay, so let's see what are the different types of parametric test. Okay, so first, t-test or students t-test. Okay, so we have two types of t-test, that is paired t-test and unpaired t-test. Okay, so let's see what is an unpaired t-test. Unpaired t-test is also known as independent t-test. Okay, and also sometimes they'll refer it as students t-test as well. Okay, for unpaired t-test. Okay, so unpaired t-test is used when the sample is drawn from two different populations, whereas paired t-test is used when the sample is drawn from the same population, like before and after the intervention. Okay, I'll explain using examples of an unpaired t-test. Okay, so a comparative study of oral hygiene status of smokers and non-smokers. So you have two groups. That is like I have told you samples when it is drawn from two different populations. So here we have two groups, smokers and non-smokers, and we are studying about oral hygiene status. So we have to compare two means that is drawn from two different populations. So in that case, we can you go for unpaired t-test. Clear? And paired t-test, what I have told, sample is drawn from the same population just before and after the intervention. Okay. So that is like knowledge of nursing students towards traumatic dental injuries before and after health education. So we are giving a health education, that is the intervention, and we are checking for the knowledge like before and after. Here the sample is the same, we are just comparing is before and after. So mean is compared before and after. So in that case we have to use paired t-test. So it is like paired data, same sample just before and after. We are pairing. And unpaired is like two different samples. So remember this always, that is a main difference. Okay. Okay, another example of unpaired t-test. We have to find out the effect of drug among patients with primary and secondary hypertension. Okay, so we have patients with primary hypertension. We have people with secondary hypertension. We are comparing two means. So samples are drawn from two different populations. In that case, also unpaired t-test. So that is about paired and unpaired t-test. Now let's see if we have more than two groups, how we can proceed. Okay. So an example is that effect of stevia coated fennel seeds, sucrose coated fennel seeds, and roasted fennel seeds on salivary pH. So we are comparing three types of fennel seeds and what is the difference or what is impact among them on salivary pH. So we'll having three groups. The three people were consuming this fennel seeds, roasted, sucrose coated, and stevia coated fennel seeds. So three groups are there. So usually in your mind you will think like we can go for unpaired t-test. Like first two we can go for unpaired t-test. Then second, that is like first you can do unpaired t-test among stevia coated with sucrose coated, then sucrose coated with roasted fennel seeds, and roasted with stevia coated, like that, right? So in that case what will happen is that there is a chance of increase in type 1 error. Okay, so we'll be having three treatments, so six possible combinations, pairwise comparisons will be there. So in that case, if we do go for multiple t-test, it will result in increase in type 1 error. Okay, so if we have more than two groups, we'll go for analysis of variance, otherwise known as ANOVA. Okay, it can be used in cases where there are more than two groups. Okay, another example, if we are comparing the zone of inhibition by using different types of toothpaste, we have group A, group B, group C, group D. Okay, and we are comparing the zone of inhibition. So we have four different groups. We can go for ANOVA. Clear? So this also follows the same pattern of the parametric test. Data should be normally distributed. Clear? Okay, so that is about paired t-test, unpaired t-test, and ANOVA. So I'll be dealing with the categories of ANOVA in the next session. Okay, thank you.